Hi, this is Swapnil Bhartiya, and we are here at VMware Explore. And today we have with us Joshua Burgin, the VP of Product and Strategy at VMware. It's great to have you on the show.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
First of all, it's really good to be in person out there, meeting people, because the chemistry, you feel. So, I think officially it was the first day of the event. I came on Sunday, so
Yes.
there was yesterday. You may have been to the booth section, you have talked to a lot of partners. What kind of energy you're feeling here today?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is actually my first in-person conference since before the pandemic. So it's really great to be back here in person, meeting the customers, the vendors, the other employees, some of whom I've only seen on video conference. It's hard to believe that it was November of 2019, the last time I was at an in-person conference. I'd say the energy is pretty incredible here. There's lots of announcements. People are super excited to meet with us. We get a lot of really good feedback, and that's why we do these kind of things.
Exactly. And you came to VMware from AWS, I think roughly 6 months ago. What has been the experience for you?
As way of background, I was actually one of Amazon's first 100 employees way back in the 1990s when I wrote software for the website that we would now call DevOps, but it was very primitive back then, and we did everything by hand. So it's kind of interesting to watch the evolution along the years. And then I left Amazon and did a bunch of startups, none of which were successful, and then came back to AWS in 2014 and stayed there for about 8 years before transitioning over to VMware. I had actually been working with some of the folks at VMware, including Raghu and Mark Lohmeyer's team, as we have VMC on AWS. And I was always really attracted to the way they focus on people here and the culture of innovation. And that's definitely been reflected in my experience in the last 7 months since joining. There's a ton of innovation, a ton of energy. We have people all over the world who I don't think have missed a beat despite having the pandemic and having to work remotely. And I think you see that reflected in all of the announcements today.
Any announcement that you were really excited about?
For sure. There were so many announcements, right? It's almost hard for me to keep up. I have to watch the general session. But I would say that Tanzu, which is I think why I came to VMware, I really feel like it's a revolutionary time in technology. And the Tanzu announcements with TAP 1.3, I think you talked to my colleague Valentina earlier, just very excited about what we're doing there for platform as a service teams. Also our new features for TMC, the Tanzu Mission Control, including lifecycle management for the Amazon EKS service. And then also we unified our TKG additions with TKG 2.0. So there's tight integration with vSphere 8. And you can take your existing vSphere infrastructure and make it into an enterprise-ready Kubernetes grid. That's pretty impressive. That's something a lot of people have been asking us for.
Since you are, VP of Product and Strategy, and if you look at VMware, the product span, a lot of products, they go predate the cloud era, and then there are a lot of products which are meant or born in the cloud era. You talk about Tanzu, you talk about vSphere. So first of all, talk about, if I look at you, who do I look at, what's your role when we look at all these products and the strategy, and talk about that.
Yeah, ultimately I have 3 areas of focus here. So the first is, and most importantly, meeting with customers, hearing what they need, bringing it back and making sure that our product portfolio and our roadmaps reflect what customers need. I like to believe about 90% of what we're building is directly related to something that a customer have told us or multiple customers. And then about 10% of it is where we reach around the corner and deliver something that they didn't even know they wanted and that we hope delights them. So that's a big part of the role. The other part of the role, as you mentioned, is there's this huge VMware infrastructure. There are many business units. And I spend a lot of time working with my peers in these other business units, figuring out what can we do that makes us better together. So an example of that is we now have in our Tanzu for Kubernetes operations, we've been able to scale it down to like a single master and a single worker node, which is better for our edge use cases, right? So that's something that we did working with our edge business unit. And then I think the third thing that I do here is I like to call it the connective tissue or building the operating system for the organization. So that's scalable mechanisms for how we handle customer feedback, roadmaps, handling customer escalations, doing business reviews, that sort of thing. Now, obviously, I've seen that evolve over time, and I'm kind of bringing, maybe I hope, the best of what I've learned at all the different companies, from Amazon to AWS to Zynga, and trying to learn from the people at VMware as well.
If I ask you, what role do you see Tanzu will play in the larger cloud native ecosystem?
We hope obviously a big one. It's still really early days. So one of the things that we've noticed is 10 years ago it was famously said that software is eating the world, and now I feel like that's happening with containers. Right? It's rapidly disrupting technologies and industries. Something like 70% of companies have implemented, at least to a small degree, container technology. And about 50% of them are telling us they're going to go big on containers in the future. So whether you're on on-prem data center using bare metal, using vSphere, using VMC in the cloud, using any number of cloud providers, Amazon, Google, Oracle, we have support for all of that with Tanzu. I didn't mention it earlier, but Tanzu Mission Control and Tanzu Kubernetes Grid are now available on Oracle Cloud and on Google Cloud. So that's a lot of customer choice. So I think Tanzu is both in some ways like a bridge to the future and also paving the future, which is interesting, of course, because nothing is really certain. So paving the runway when you don't know where you're going is always a fun challenge.
Today at Keynote, we also had CTO from Broadcom. The whole acquisition is still going through. And Tanzu is also, it has an open source angle. Do you see any concern there from the community? Or you're like, no, the community is totally, they're confident in VMware's own history, so they're like, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that the number one thing I focus on is what our customers are asking us to do. And I think that's what we're going to continue to be doing here. The team is laser focused on that mission, delivering software at a rapid clip. As we mentioned earlier, TKG 2.0, TAP 1.3, these are kind of rapid iterations on the platform. VMware has a 20 plus year history of technology innovation, including integration with the open source communities. We're very proud on the Tanzu side of being very close to the Kubernetes community. Our Tanzu Mission Control has some components that are based on Flux CD for the continuous GitOps integration. TAP itself uses the Backstage UI, which is an open source platform as a service technology that's getting a ton of adoption. So I don't have any concerns at all as long as I think we continue to focus on delivering what we need for our customers. The future is really bright.
Let's just talk about Kubernetes for a while. It's a great technology, great community there, but as the adoption is growing in production, one of the pain points that a lot of folks, because everybody wants to be on the Kubernetes boat, is the complexity. So one challenge is that sometimes all you wanted to do was that small thing, but you have to deal with all this complexity that comes with Kubernetes. So how do you see that challenge? And once again, how Tanzu or VMware is looking at, while cutting down on the complexity, but don't make it too opinionated that they don't get the Kubernetes experience.
I think you really nailed it with the last point you said, which is make it less complex, but also make it open and modular. That's really what we've strived to do. So I think you heard earlier from CVS, which is a customer of our Tanzu application platform. What they're telling us in terms of decreasing the complexity is that after adopting TAP, their junior developers, right? So the people who are newest to the platform are 5 times more productive at deploying applications, and they're doing it with more security and higher quality. So I think we're onto something there, although it's still early days. Then you also have customers like Discovery Holdings, which is a financial services company based in South Africa. And what they've told us is that all of the VMware products, whether it's vRealize Automation, which is now known as ARIA Operations, whether it's our Tanzu Observability, which is now part of the ARIA suite, whether it's TAP or TKO, these things together give them this unified platform for reducing complexity. It's not just about Kubernetes. I actually think technology is pretty complex overall, especially because many people who are adopting Kubernetes are not abandoning their traditional VM or bare metal or multi-cloud strategy in order to standardize just on Kubernetes. It doesn't fix every problem. And then I think lastly, I was really excited to hear this case from S&P Global. And so they talk about this concept called shadow IT. And so this is when you have all of these teams building their own thing off on their own. And that's really what we built Tanzu to combat. And S&P Global is verifying that we're doing a pretty good job there, which is, to get back to your original point, it's a flexible modular platform for doing development and deployment and maintenance of your Kubernetes-based workloads, but it's very modular, right? You can use Jenkins, you can bring your own CI/CD, you can support Backstage plugins. All of these things, we really made sure to consider that we want to make it batteries included, but swappable.
what attracted you towards VMware? Of course, I've been covering VMware, so I am
Sure.
also a bit biased. So I do know a lot of reasons, but I want to hear from you.
I think there were two factors that really drew me here. The first is that I think VMware is incredibly well positioned as the Switzerland of multi-cloud, which is something Raghu often says. People write a lot about the cloud wars between the hyperscalers, but in reality, somewhere between 75 and 90% of technology spending is still on-prem. All of these business applications that have been written over the last 15 or 20 years. And so people are really looking to modernize that, and VMware is incredibly well positioned, I think, to take advantage of that. And the second thing, of course, is the opportunity in Tanzu, which I have been really impressed by what the team has done. I've been watching it from the sidelines, and I couldn't pass up the opportunity to be a part of the team.
Joshua, once again, thank you so much for taking time out today and sit down with me and talk about, of course, your own journey, career journey, and also how VMware is helping companies in their own journey to digital transformation and cloud adoption. So thanks for sharing all those insights, and I would love to have you back on the show, maybe remotely. Thank you.
Absolutely. Always happy to help.